2022 was an absolutely stellar year for video games. One of the best ever, in my opinion. I was playing nonstop great titles from beginning to end. These are the top 10 games of 2022. If Square Enix's Octopath Traveler was a callback to classic Final Fantasy games, Triangle Strategy was a callback to Ogre Tactics Battle and Final Fantasy Tactics. This is classic strategy RPG goodness with a new setting, a new focus on low fantasy, and a whole brand new cast of characters. Triangle Strategy really impressed me with its very, very well fleshed out cast, with its diverse worldviews for each character, with wildly different endings depending on what you do. The game just oozes style and substance. It is an absolute gem for any fan of the JRPG genre. Coming in at number 9 is Splatoon 3, exclusively on Nintendo Switch. Splatoon has made a name for itself for being the best third-person multiplayer online shooter out there, and the third entry really reiterates that point. With brand new weapons and a brand new setting, a brand new story, the game has evolved a lot in the past 7 years. Over the past 2 sequels, there have been a lot of changes in Splatoon, but the game fundamentally really sticks out as a new IP, as like a new heavy hitter in this specific genre. There really isn't anything like Splatoon, and this is an IP that really does deserve a lot more attention and respect. Coming in at number 8 is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. Now, this is a game that really surprised me. I felt that I was getting very tired of the Warriors formula. I thought the last 2 Warriors games I tried, Age of Calamity and Samurai Warriors 5, were kind of underwhelming. I was not expecting a lot from 3 Hopes, but I found myself very surprised with the level of quality offered here, with its surprisingly well-written cast of characters, with its surprisingly compelling gameplay, and surprisingly good stories. In a lot of ways, 3 Hopes is actually a lot better than 3 Houses, because unlike 3 Houses, which is more of like an Academy of Adventure type story that eventually leads the 3 powers on the continent going to war, like 3 Hopes focuses entirely on the war effort, and it features a completely new plot line and completely new alternative plot lines to experience. And it really further fleshes out the events of the original. In a lot of ways, 3 Hopes suffers because I think you absolutely are required to play 3 Houses to really fully appreciate this one. But if you're like me and you really, really, really love 3 Houses and everything it does, from the setting to the story to the characters, you will deeply, deeply appreciate this release. Coming in at number 7 is the legendary Super Famicom release, Live Alive. Now, this is the oldest game by far on this list. This was originally released in 1994 on the Super Famicom as a Japanese exclusive Super Nintendo game that never saw release in the West, but this is a fully redone remake with fully voice-acted lines, redone visuals, and I believe some balancing changes. Live Alive has a very strong reputation for being an underappreciated classic on the Super Famicom, and to see it get released here and reach a wider audience was a magical experience. Playing this game and experiencing it for the first time, completely spoiler-free, was an amazing feeling. It really did feel like I was uncovering a hidden Super Nintendo gem. I don't think I've had this much fun playing a new Super Nintendo game since I first played ActRaiser in 2020. There are lots of JRPGs like this, and we've been getting a lot more re-releases from these like this recently, especially from Square. So I really hope this game's success really kicks off more of these kind of remakes in the future. Square Enix, generally speaking, is killing it with this stuff right now, and I desperately want to see more. Coming in at number 6, an indie game. This year was fantastic for indie games in general, but one of the standout releases, one that I think most people would consider to be one of the best games released this year, period, is Sifu, a martial arts action game on Nintendo Switch. This is probably one of the best beat-em-ups of its kind I've ever played, with a stellar combat system, a really interesting level-up mechanic, great level design, great stage design, great replay value, great boss fights, great enemy AI in general, and just a fantastic presentation all bring it together to create something marvelous. I really love this kind of thing, and the fact that this game was so successful made me very, very happy. At number 5, another major surprise, Bayonetta 3, exclusively on Nintendo Switch, was actually quite a bit better than I was expecting it. I was expecting this to be another step downward in the downward spiral that was Platinum Games, but no, Bayonetta 3 really does feel like a game that Platinum would have put out in their heyday. It really does feel, in a lot of ways, like an evolution of the original. It is nowhere near as bad as 2, in other words. It's far better than Astral Chain. It's the best game they've put out in years, since The Wonderful 101, in my mind. Now, it's nowhere near as good as that. Like, it does have, some problems with, maybe some wacky character decisions and some poor design, poor visuals and minor issues. I do still prefer the original Bayonetta, but overall, when it comes to the general gameplay, the level design, some of the decisions they made, some of the new mechanics such as Demon Slave and some of the crazy new weapons, this game was an absolute treat to play through. I loved this one. I highly recommend it to any fan of any action game series. This is definitely one of the strongest action game titles this year. Coming in at number 4, a game that no one saw coming, a game that I didn't even know existed until everyone in my stream chat insisted I play it. This is Neon White, one of the most original, engaging, interesting action speedrunning games I've ever played. It looks super low budget. The story is corny as shit. The premise seems hackneyed. The gameplay seems repetitive and boring, but they somehow made an absolute masterpiece. This feels like this was made by a small dev team who had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do to create a new, interesting IP. And they delivered. Playing this game, soaring through these environments, meeting and interacting with these characters, exploring these areas, shooting enemies. It is one of the most intense action games I've played in a long time. You are doing yourself a disservice if you do not play this masterpiece. Coming in at number 3 is a game that, from a developer that I honestly didn't really have any respect for up until this point. When I played Muramasa on Nintendo Wii, I found myself very, very underwhelmed by it and had no real desire to really experience anything more from Vanillaware, even though I was assured by fans that the developer was actually top tier. And when 13 Sentinels was released on Switch, I found myself very considering skipping it. I wasn't sure whether I would enjoy it or not. I had reservations considering some of the things I heard about it, but in the end, I decided to pick it up digitally. And was I glad I did? This is one of the most compelling, unique sci-fi narratives I've ever experienced, with really fun, action-based, strategy stages that I honestly still think back on very, very fondly. This game is very, very hard to get into. It's probably the most niche game on this list, considering its presentation, and it is one of the most story-driven games I've ever played. 95% of the game is cutscenes, but if you experience 13 Sentinels, you will never forget it. Coming in at number 2 is Kirby and the Forgotten Land, a game that instantly charmed Nintendo fans for its first ever Kirby adventure in 3D. It's hard to believe, but Kirby, for years, has never had a fully 3D entry. And now that we've actually gotten it, now that we've seen what Kirby can do in 3D, It was worth the wait. This is after I experienced went back and played through all the old Kirby's again. This is by far my favorite game in the entire series. This has cemented itself as like one of my favorite games on Nintendo Switch. This was better than Super Mario Odyssey. This was better than like a number of high profile Nintendo releases. This was HAL Labs at its absolute peak. I had no idea they had it in them to deliver such a high quality product. I was blown away by this, and I really wish this game was talked about more. I think like core Nintendo fans really appreciate this for the gem it is, but like I think casual audiences, people who don't play on Nintendo consoles are kind of missing out on this one because outside of core Nintendo fans, I'm not seeing a lot of praise for this. Check this one out. Like you will not you will not be disappointed. And the game of the year for 2022 goes to Pokemon Legends Arceus. I have not had this much fun with a Pokemon game since I think at least Gen 5. I enjoyed Gen 7 and Gen 8, not Gen 6. I've enjoyed several Pokemon games since then. I have fond memories of Gen 2, of like the Gen 4 remakes. I love the originals, but this very well might be my favorite Pokemon game ever because it really does feel like you're going out into the wilderness and like tracking down and finding these creatures and like utilizing them to explore the environment and uncover new secrets and hidden objectives. The game feels very limited. It feels very primitive compared to something like Breath of the Wild, but I think it actually works to the game's advantage. I think it has very compelling side quests. I think it has a very compelling setup. I love the new mechanics, the additions, the ability to capture Pokemon and like without having to battle them is a nice touch. I really do love everything about this game, more so than I think most people. I have not seen a lot of fans praise this game for how it like handled the how it handles the Pokemon universe. I found myself very charmed at the idea of a prequel where people are learning what these creatures are and how they can like live alongside them and kind of befriend them and kind of like coexist. This is the origin of the Pokemon universe in a way. And I found it so interesting and so compelling and so unique and creative. There's just so much to praise about this game. There really isn't anything released this year that even comes close. Like, not even close. There was nothing this year that I enjoyed as much as Pokemon Legends Arceus.